What's up? It's that crazy straw guy, back at it again with another deck profile. Last time we talked about zombies, so I decided I wanted to try and get some Aikashis from the Hidden Summoners, but that didn't end up panning out well. Didn't get enough cards to make the deck full, but I did get a good number of Nephthys monsters, so I decided to go with that and decided to build a deck. This is my Nephthys Shrieking deck. It's pretty heavy on monsters in the main deck, has a medium size of spell cards, and has a almost full extra deck. Without further ado, let's just get right into it, starting off with 2 copies of your big boy himself, 2 Cerulean Sacred Phoenix of Nephthys. Now, this can be a varying ratio depending on what you want. I personally run 2, just so I can sometimes get off Rebirth's second effect, which is a ritual spell. Anyways, Cerulean, basically, when he's ritual summoned, he gains certain effects. He can destroy any number of Nephthys cards you control or that are in your hand, and then destroy an equal number of monsters your opponent controls. So basically a giant board wipe if you have enough monsters. He also has a revival effect during your next standby phase if he was destroyed by battle or card effect, similar to Sacred Phoenix of Nephthys, which is the original one. So really a big monster, also level 8, so you can go into Hope Harbinger if you just have him on the field and don't know what to do with him. Next up, we have 2 copies of Devotee of Nephthys, apologies. This is your playmaker of the deck. She is a small ritual level 2. She must be ritual summoned with Rebirth, similar to Cerulean. And when she's ritual summoned, she can special summon a Nephthys monster from your deck. This includes all of your other cultists, like Disciple or Matriarch. It also includes the original Sacred Phoenix of Nephthys. And also, if she's in the graveyard, you can pop a Nephthys card in your hand in order to special summon herself to your side of the field. So it's good for getting out for extra link material to go into your big link monsters like Borreload. Next up, we have 3 copies of Sacred Phoenix of Nephthys. This is a card you want to see constantly in your hand, along with a couple of True Kings like Vanisher or Fathomer. Just easy cards for you to destroy and use their effects later on for searches, or specifically for this guy. He brings himself back during the next standby if he was destroyed by a card effect, and then he destroys all spell and trap cards on the field. That includes field spells and cards in the back row. So it's really good for back row heavy decks. Just wipe out everything. And it's all one effect, so it's not like separate effects like Cerulean's. So I think it's really good. Next up, moving on to the Cultist, the smallest spellcaster wins. First up, we have 3 copies of Disciple. This is your main searcher of the deck. Destroy a card in your hand and then add a, Nephthys monster from your deck to your hand. As well, she has a second effect, is to be destroyed by card effect and sent to the graveyard. During your next standby phase, you can add 1 Nephthys spell trap card from your deck to your hand. Both of these are once per turn, but overall, I think these are really good effects. Just good ways to search out constantly, and honestly, a good playmaker in the deck to get out with from Devotee. Next up, we have 2 copies of Hannah Nephthys. This is your second important cultist. Basically, you tribute her and 1 other monster in order to special summon a Sacred Phoenix of Nephthys from your deck or hand. So I guess that's okay. It's good for swimming out the field with big birds to go onto your level rank 8s. So, run it in your discretion. I personally just like it because it gets out Sacred Phoenix a lot easier. Sorry for moving the mat. Next up, we have 2 copies of Matriarch of Nephthys. This is your final cultist here. Basically, she can destroy a card in your hand in order to special summon a Nephthys monster from your graveyard that's level 4 or lower. So that includes all of your other cultists. And also, if she's destroyed by a card effect, she brings herself back from the graveyard. So basically, good for swimming out for more material, similar to Devotee. So, generally okay. Moving on to the True King engine of the deck. We are running 3 copies of True King Draco Phoenix, 3 copies of True King Fathomer, and 2 copies of Vanisher. Now, all of these have effects that activate where they can pop 2 cards in your hand, including 1 of their shared attributes. So Fathomer needs a water monster, Vanisher needs a fire, and Draco Phoenix needs a wind. And then they special summon themselves to your side of the field, and if you used 2 of the attribute required, they each have a special effect that involves banishment. Vanisher banishes a monster on the field. Fathomer banishes 2 of your opponent's back row, and Phoenix banishes the top 4 of your opponent's deck. So generally really good abilities. They also have destruction effects similar to all of your Nephthys monsters, but they're a bit more immediate. Fathomer is by far the best, being able, when it's destroyed by a card effect, to special summon a different True King from your deck to your side of the field. Vanisher adds a True King from graveyard to hand, and Draco Phoenix, I believe, adds from deck to hand. They all actually mention specifically worms, but come on, if you're running these guys, you're running other True Kings. Anyways, they're just kind of there for the engine. Obviously, you have fire monsters, you have water monsters in the form of Fathomer himself, and you have fire monsters in the form of Sacred Phoenix. So just a bunch of monsters to destroy to get some good cards loaded up in the grave or get some pluses. For the final monsters, we have 2 copies of Manjun of 10,000 Hands. Really, this is what you're going to be using your normal summon on. If you get this and Devotee or Rebirth, then you're basically in business and ready to go right into your plays. You don't usually use your normal summon that often because all of your monsters usually have special summon effects, except for Disciple and Matriarch, and of course Hand. But hey, this is what you got to deal with when you are on a budget like me. But obviously a pretty solid card just to start your plays out. And then finally we have 2 Ash Blossoms, just for those extra fire monsters. We're running a low count on fires compared to all the other attributes other than like water. Also, it's really good for negating negating searches for your opponents so that you can gain the plus while they can't. But I'd honestly recommend you replace these cards with Called by the Grave. It's a better card for this deck because all of your plays kind of rely on adding from deck to hand, so you can negate your opponent's Ash Blossoms instead. So that's just my personal preference. That is it for the monster lineup. Moving right into the spells, we have the Ritual spell, which is 3 copies of Rebirth of Nephthys. I can see other people cutting this to 2, but honestly 3 is really good, just in case you don't start off with a Manjun in your hand. Basically, you Ritual summon a Nephthys monster, so that means you summon Cerulean or you summon Devotee. And as well, it has a secondary effect that if you use Devotee or Cerulean as the tribute for the Ritual summon, you get to destroy 1 card on the field. And this is in all one big effect. So if your opponent does not negate the initial Ritual summon, then you will be able to pop if you use Devotee or Cerulean. Usually you'll be using, basically what you're going to be doing is you're going to get a whole bunch of searches out to get this in your hand, along with 2 copies of Cerulean, so that you can get a free pop on top of whatever you have to tribute to Cerulean for his effect. So honestly, really good card. I think not exactly the best, definitely not Gishki levels of Ritual spells, but honestly, it's pretty decent, serviceable. Moving on for the other spells, we have 2 of Last Hope, pretty simple, short and sweet. Pop a Nephthys card you control, and pop a card your opponent controls. This is unfortunately targeting, Nephthys in return, but it's really good for getting rid of specific cards if your opponent, has troublesome back row. You can most likely replace it with Twin Twisters, but this kind of synergizes well with the deck, being able to destroy monsters that you summoned. You don't want to leave your Matriarch or Disciple on the field with their lower attack stats. You can just use this to get them out of the way and get a troublesome card off of your back. We also have 3 copies of Pre-Preparation of Rites. Pretty simple. Just an easy search for Devotee and your Rebirth. And then 2 Preparation of Rites. Once again, easy search and recursion. Unfortunately, you can only search Devotee with this effect because Cerulean is a level 8. But it's still serviceable what it can do. This bunch of cards. For the final cards off, we actually have something from the True Draco's side of things. We have Dragonic Diagram. I would run 3 of these, but unfortunately I didn't have the budget. I would really recommend you running 3 of these just to get consistent True Draco monsters on the field constantly with their destruction effects. And also I run the Terraforming just to search it out. The final cards I'm running are 2 one-offs. First is World Legacy Succession. There's a good reason why I run this, because almost every single one of your monsters in the deck, except for about 3 from the extra deck, are link monsters. So basically, you get to summon any free monsters and get some free link materials off to go into higher and higher plays. And the final one, a guilty pleasure of mine, Shared Ride, really good card for going second, for decks that kind of meet in the middle of going second and going first, because this deck can kind of OTK, but it's not exactly that consistent. So, just a guilty pleasure of mine. You could probably replace it with something else. That is it for the monsters. Moving on to the extra deck. Sorry, that was it for the spells. And moving on to the extra deck. First up, we have the big playmaker of the deck. We have... Where's the second one? Hold up. Technical difficulties here. There it is. We have 2 True King of All Calamities. He requires 2 level 9s, and basically, when he is on the field, you can attach 1 Xyz material during either player's turn in order to declare an attribute, and all monsters on the field become that attribute, and all monsters of that attribute that your opponent controls cannot activate their effects, and also cannot attack. So basically, this locks your opponent. It's a big lock, what you're really aiming for other than Cerulean. It's a really good card to get out. Every time that I summon this guy out against anybody I play against, they really don't have anything to do, and they have to either draw out like the removal like Kaiju's, or they just kind of wait for it to end. And usually at that point, I have such a big board established, I don't have any way to get back. Next up, we have number 38. This is what you usually use all of your spare Phoenixes for. It's good for negating spell cards, really good overall. Don't usually use the second effect that often, but sometimes it happens. It's a lot to invest, so make sure you're really, really sure that you're ready to go into Harbinger, because you're most likely sacrificing a big ritual monster and a big 2400 beater just for a negate. Sometimes that can really help you, though. Moving on to the other cards, we have a very important Nephthys monster. This is the Link monster, Nephthys Sacred Preserver. Basically, it requires 2 Nephthys monsters, and once per turn, you can add a level 8 Wing Beast monster from deck to your hand, so either OG Sacred Phoenix or Cerulean, and then add a ritual spell from your graveyard to your hand. It also has a second effect where it can pop a Nephthys monster at points to, and we'll just special summon a different one with a different name, but its effects are negated. I don't really see the use for that, but I guess it's good for when you have, like, your opponent setting up for a nuke, and you kind of want to save anything you have, so you can destroy a Cerulean that this card points to, and get it ready for the next turn. The other Link monsters that we're running are Toplopic Bomber and Warlord Dragon. Toplopic is a really good card in this deck. Basically, if anybody summons anything to a zone this card points to, it destroys all monsters on the field. And this is really good for you, but maybe not so good for your opponent because they kind of want to set up a board. It also has a secondary effect that if it attacks an opponent's monster that's in defense position, their opponent loses, I believe, loses life points equal to the original attack of the monster. So I guess that's cool too. Warlord is a bit more of a methodical version. When you get this guy out, he cannot be destroyed, cannot be targeted by monster effects. Well, jeez. Voice crack there, and he can decrease monsters' attacks by 500. He also has an effect that if he attacks a monster, he can take control of that monster non-targeting, and then, yeah, basically just free monster control. Really good for when you're going for the later games and you kind of want to slowly but surely get rid of your opponent's stuff. Another big monster that we have in the deck, in the extra deck, of course, is Sacred Flame. This isn't really... Here it is. This isn't really a Nephthys card per se, it's more like a ritual Link monster. It does protect all your Nephthys monsters, it points you from attacks or card effects, and it like prompts other people to attack it, and it can get pretty big, but basically it requires specifically ritual monsters. It accrues at least 1 ritual monster. And it gains certain effects depending on how many ritual monsters you put into it. If you used 1, it cannot be destroyed by battle, which is okay, I guess. If you use 2, it cannot be destroyed by card effects and gains 1200 attack, which means there's 3600 that cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. And if you use and if you use 3, which is asking a lot, like there's quite a bit of setup going into rituals nowadays. Basically, it turns into a 4800 beater that cannot be targeted by card effects and cannot be destroyed by battle, and are unaffected by either player's card effects. And also gains another 1200 attack, of course. So it's really can get really big, but usually you don't want to put all of your resources into this. Sometimes it's good for just like a big wall when it's your turn. You're like the first one to go. you don't have any way to go into some big plays. You don't want to risk someone out your cerulean just in case he gets out. But, run it at your discretion. I just run 2 because I don't have any other monsters from the extra deck to run. Some of the cards you're running: Security Dragon, just for the free bounce on the co-link. 1 Saberus and 1 Nightmare, just for destroying of special summon monsters and back row. And then finally 1 Underclock Taker. That is all of my Nephthys True King deck. It is really good, I'd say. Not exactly my best deck that I built, but something that is serviceable for what it is. Anyways, if you like this video, make sure to support me by leaving a comment, subscribing, liking, really doing anything to help me out, and check out some of my other stuff. I do a whole bunch of more Yu-Gi-Oh things, and pretty soon I'll be coming at you with a couple of other things that I want to talk about, especially soon in April, because that's going to be something big. Anyway, it's been that Crazy Straw Guy, and I guess I will see you next time. Bye-bye.